Johnson Thomas had learned to make himself small. It was a skill he'd perfected over the past 2 years and 7 months, the art of occupying space without leaving an impression. He sat at the far end of his brother's dining table, shoulders slightly hunched, eyes cast downward at the pot roast growing cold on his plate. Around him, the Sunday dinner ritual played out like a script everyone had memorized. "Pass the potatoes, please," young David said quietly. "Say please and thank you, sweetheart," Jane Thomas replied, her voice tight with the particular brand of patience that wasn't really patience at all. The February rain drummed against the windows of the 2-story colonial in McLean, Virginia. Beyond the lace curtains, the street was dark and quiet, the kind of neighborhood where people paid extra for the illusion of safety, where minivans sat in driveways and basketball hoops hung over garage doors like flags of normalcy. Johnson reached for his water glass. His hands, rough, calloused, marked with scars that could tell stories he'd never share, moved with deliberate slowness. No sudden movements, nothing to draw attention. He'd defused a dirty bomb with these hands 16 months ago. 73 pounds of cesium, 137 wrapped in C4, hidden in a delivery truck 3 blocks from the Capitol. He'd had 90 seconds and a pair of wire cutters. The president had shaken these hands in the Oval Office afterward behind closed doors, with no press, no ceremony, no record that it had ever happened. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and unseen connections that change lives, please like this video, comment your thoughts, and where you are watching from, share it with someone who needs it to stay motivated, and subscribe to our channel, Kindness Arena. Your support keeps these powerful, true stories alive. Jane Thomas had called them lazy just last week. "So, Johnson," Jane said now, setting down her wine glass with just enough force to make a point. "Michael tells me you had another interview this week." The quote marks were audible. "Yes," Johnson replied simply. "And—" She leaned forward, her pearl necklace catching the light from the chandelier. Jane was a handsome woman, blonde, polished, the kind of person who looked like she'd been born wearing business casual. She worked in pharmaceutical sales and made more money than Michael, a fact she mentioned with varying degrees of subtlety approximately once per conversation. It didn't pan out, right? She sat back, exchanging a look with Michael that Johnson was supposed to miss. Of course it didn't. Michael Thomas cleared his throat. He was older than Johnson by 4 years, softer around the middle, with the resigned eyes of a man who'd learned that picking battles with his wife was a losing strategy. He taught high school history, coached JV basketball, and genuinely loved his brother. But love, Johnson had learned, didn't always translate to understanding. "The market's tough right now," Michael offered. "Give it time." "Time?" Jane's laugh was sharp enough to cut. "Michael, it's been 3 years. 3 years since he got out of the military, and he's still living in our guest room, doing God knows what all day while we pay for his food, his utilities, his everything." "Jane," Michael's voice held a warning. "No." She held up a hand. "Someone needs to say this. Your brother is 36 years old. 36. Do you know what I was doing at 36? I was building a career, buying property, creating a life." Emma, 13 and too perceptive for anyone's comfort, stared at her plate. David, 11 and sweet-natured like his father, shifted in his seat. Johnson cut a piece of meat, chewed slowly, and swallowed. In his peripheral vision, he tracked the reflection in the window, the street behind him, the angle of approach, the sightlines. 3 years of sitting at this table, and he'd never once sat with his back to an unmonitored entrance. Old habits, or rather, current necessities. "I appreciate everything you've done," Johnson said quietly. "Both of you. Appreciate." Jane seized on the word. "You appreciate it." "Well, appreciation doesn't pay the mortgage. Johnson, appreciation doesn't put food on this table or pay for the electricity you use running that computer all hours of the night. I've offered to contribute." "With what money?" Her voice rose. "You don't have a job. You've had, what, 3 interviews in 6 months? And somehow, mysteriously, none of them work out. It's like you're not even trying." The phone in Johnson's pocket vibrated. Once, twice, 3 times. That was the emergency code. His pulse didn't change. His expression didn't flicker, but every nerve in his body suddenly snapped to attention. 3 vibrations meant something big, something immediate. "Maybe I should just go," he said, starting to rise. "Oh, perfect." Jane's voice dripped with contempt. "Run away. That's what you do, isn't it? When things get uncomfortable, when someone finally tells you the truth, you just disappear into that room with your computer and your secrets and your—" "Jane, that's enough," Michael said, more firmly this time. "No, Michael, it's not enough. It's not nearly enough." She turned to Johnson, and there was something almost like grief in her eyes, disappointment, maybe, or pity. "You were supposed to be this hero, you know? This big military man. 10 years in the service. Special forces or whatever you did that you could never talk about. I thought that you'd come home and do something amazing." She gestured at him, at his faded jeans and plain gray t-shirt, at the man who looked like he'd surrendered to mediocrity. "But you're not a hero. You're just broken. Used up. The military took whatever made you special and left us with this. With someone who can't even hold down a normal job. Someone who's given up." The phone vibrated again, 4 times in rapid succession. Code Phoenix. That meant someone was going to die. Soon. Unless Johnson could stop it. "You want to know what I really think?" Jane stood, gathering plates with sharp, angry movements. "I think you're scared. I think you can't face the real world, so you hide here in our house, pretending to look for work while really you're just— what? Playing video games? Browsing the internet? Being useless." The word landed like a punch. Useless. Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, stop. I'm sorry, baby, but someone has to say it. Your uncle is a grown man who's chosen to be a burden. Who's chosen to be?" She looked directly at Johnson. "Useless." Johnson stood slowly. In 72 hours, he'd slept 9 hours total. He'd spent Friday night in a situation room coordinating the extraction of an undercover agent from a Russian intelligence compound. Saturday morning, he'd briefed the director of national intelligence on a Chinese infiltration of the Department of Energy. This afternoon, before dinner, he'd reviewed threat assessments for the upcoming G7 summit and flagged 3 potential attack vectors that no one else had caught. He'd saved 17 lives this month that he knew of, and he'd done it all while Jane Thomas called him useless. "You're right," he said quietly. Jane blinked, surprised by the agreement. "I haven't been honest with you. Either of you." He looked at Michael. "And I'm sorry for that." But the doorbell rang. Not a ring, actually. A buzz that went on for 3 full seconds. Long, insistent, urgent. Then silence. Then the knock. Bang, 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 bang. For strikes. Hard enough to rattle the door in its frame. Hard enough to make David jump in his seat and Emma gasp. "FBI, this is Special Agent Reeves. Open the door immediately. This is an emergency." The room went still. Jane's face was drained of color. The plates in her hands tilted, forgotten. Michael stood, confusion and fear warring across his features. "What?" But Johnson was already moving. Not the shuffling, apologetic movement of the past 2 years. This was different, purposeful, predatory. He crossed the living room in 4 long strides. His entire body language transformed. He moved like water, like smoke, like something that had been compressed and was suddenly, violently, expanding back to its true form. He checked the peephole, a brief glance, but his eyes cataloged everything. 4 agents. Full tactical gear. Reeves in the lead, Rodriguez flanking right, Ernest and Morrison covering the sides. Weapons holstered, but hands ready. 2 black SUVs in the street, engines running. Neighbors' lights clicking on. This was real. He opened the door. Special Advisor Thomas. Agent Diana Reeves was 47, former Marine, 22 years with the Bureau. Johnson had worked with her on the embassy extraction in Tunisia. She'd taken a bullet meant for him and never mentioned it again. Her gray hair was pulled back tight, and her eyes were all business. "We have a Code Phoenix situation. Director Morrison needs you at the Strategic Operations Center. Now." "Understood." Johnson's voice had changed. Deeper. Harder. The voice of someone used to be obeyed. "Sitrep. Not here, sir. But it's bad. Multiple credible threats against Vice President Hendricks' motorcade. Intel suggests inside assistance at the highest levels. You're the only one cleared for the complete picture. Director's waiting on your assessment before we move. Behind Johnson, he could hear his family in the hallway. Heard Jane's sharp intake of breath. Heard Michael's confused Johnson. 1 minute, Johnson said to Reeves. Sir, we don't have 1 minute, Agent. That's an order. Reeves' jaw tightened, but she nodded. Yes, sir. But, sir, whatever's about to happen in the next 60 seconds, make it count, because we've got a vice president who's going to be in a car in 45 minutes, and someone on our side is trying to kill him. Johnson turned. His family stood in the hallway like a tableau of shock. Michael, halfway between the dining room and the door. Jane, still holding the plates, her mouth open. Emma and David, peeking around their parents, eyes wide. Johnson, Michael said slowly. What is happening? Agent Rodriguez appeared in the doorway behind Reeves. He was carrying equipment, a tactical vest, a secure tablet, and a communications rig. Behind him, Ernest was on her phone, speaking rapid-fire Mandarin. Morrison was scanning the street, hand near her weapon. Your brother, Reeves said, stepping into the house without waiting for invitation, is Special Advisor Johnson Thomas, Level 5 clearance, Senior Tactical Consultant to the FBI's Critical Incident Response Group. He's been running our most sensitive protective operations for the past 2 years. A plate slipped from Jane's hands. It fell in slow motion, or maybe that was just how Johnson's mind processed it, the way it processed everything now, in threat assessments and probability matrices and vectors of attack. The plate tumbled, rotating twice, and shattered against the hardwood floor. The sound seemed to break the spell. 2 years. Michael's voice cracked. You've been with the FBI for 2 years. 2 years, 7 months, and 16 days, Johnson confirmed. He took the tactical vest from Rodriguez, began strapping it on with practiced efficiency. Before that, I was with Defense Intelligence. Before that, Joint Special Operations Command. I've been working on counterterrorism and executive protection since 6 weeks after I retired from active duty. But Jane's voice was barely a whisper. But you said you were looking for work. You said. I lied. Johnson looked at her directly. No apology in his eyes. Just a fact. I've been lying for almost 3 years. Because the work I do requires it. Because the less you knew, the safer you were. Because knowledge is a target, and I wasn't going to paint one on my family. He moved past them toward the guest room, his room, and now they could see inside as he opened the door fully for the first time in years. It wasn't a guest room. 6 monitors lined one wall, all currently dark, but clearly high-end equipment. Satellite communications gear hummed quietly in the corner, lights blinking green and amber. A secure server rack. Encrypted hard drives. A weapons safe built into the wall, barely visible behind a false panel. Maps of D.C. marked with security zones and threat assessments. Photographs of people, some with red X's through their faces, some circled, some connected with string like something from a conspiracy theorist's fever dream. Except this wasn't a theory. Oh my God, Emma breathed. Johnson grabbed a go bag from the closet, already packed, always ready. He pulled out a secure phone, glanced at the screen, and his jaw tightened. How bad? He asked Reeves. 3 teams. Coordinated. They got inside information on the route, timing, and security protocols. This isn't some amateur operation, sir. Someone in our house is dirty, and they're trying to start a war. The vice president is currently at a fundraiser at the Watergate. He's scheduled to depart in 43 minutes. The route takes him past the Federal Triangle, across the Memorial Bridge, and back to the Naval Observatory. 7.3 miles. 14 potential checkpoints, and someone, somewhere in our chain, is planning to make sure he doesn't complete the trip. Johnson's mind was already working, visualizing the route, cataloging vulnerabilities. Hendricks is ex-military. He'll have instincts, but they're inside our operation. Then his instincts won't help him. Sir, we need your call on this. Director Morrison wants to know if we can cancel the motorcade. No. Johnson was pulling on the tactical vest, checking equipment. We abort. They know we're onto them. They'll go to ground. We'll lose our chance to find the mole. But if we proceed, we control the situation. We know it's coming. That's an advantage. He looked at Reeves. How many people know about the threats? 7. All. Level 5. All people you've personally vetted. Good. Keep it that way. If there's a leak, it's coming from somewhere else in the chain. He grabbed a secure tablet, began pulling up files. Rodriguez, I want full surveillance on every member of the Vice President's protection detail. Ernest, give me the duty roster for the past 6 months. Anyone who's had access to route planning, security protocols, scheduling. Morrison, I need you to. Johnson. Michael's voice cut through the tactical discussion. Quiet but firm. Johnson, stop. Johnson looked up. His brother stood in the doorway to the room, looking at the monitors, the equipment, and the evidence of a life he'd never suspected. Looking at his brother like he was a stranger. Is any of it real? Michael asked. The job searches? The interviews? Being unemployed? No. The money? Do you even need? I make $187,000 a year, plus classified bonuses for special operations. Johnson's voice was flat, matter of fact. I've been contributing to your mortgage for the past 2 years. Anonymous payments that your bank probably told you were from a grateful veteran charity. Michael's eyes widened. The Wounded Warrior payments were for me, because I couldn't just hand you money that would have raised questions, but I could make it look like it came from somewhere else. Jay made a sound. Not quite a sob, not quite a gasp. Why? She whispered. Why lie? Why let us think? Her voice broke. Why let me say those things? Johnson looked at her, really looked at her, and for a moment, the hardness in his eyes softened. Because if you believed I was important, you'd treat me like I was important. You'd ask questions, get curious, and maybe mention it to a friend. My brother-in-law works for the FBI, and maybe that friend mentions it to someone else, and maybe 6 conversations later, someone who wants to hurt me has a pressure point. He glanced at Emma and David. 2 pressure points. For, if you count Michael and yourself. The implication hung in the air. People want to kill you. David's voice was small, frightened. People want to kill what I protect, Johnson corrected gently. I'm just in a way, but yes, son. If the wrong people knew who I was and where I lived, this house would become a target. You would become a leverage, and I've seen what happens to leverage in my line of work. His voice hardened. I've seen what they do to children. Emma had her hand over her mouth. Michael had gone pale. Jane just stared at the brother-in-law she'd called useless 17 minutes ago. Sir, Reeves tapped her watch. 40 minutes. Right. Johnson turned back to his equipment. All business again. He pulled up a map on the tablet, began marking locations. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Rodriguez, Ernest, you're with me. Morrison, you're going to stay here. Sir, Morrison looked confused. You should be protecting my family. Because if this is as coordinated as you say, there's a chance they know about me. Which means they might know about this address. He looked at Michael. Which means you're in danger. Johnson, Michael started. Not now, brother. Johnson's voice was kind but final. Morrison, you don't leave them. Not for anything. If someone comes through that door who isn't me or another agent you personally recognize, you shoot first and we'll sort it out later. Clear. Clear, sir. Johnson grabbed a jacket, not his usual worn denim, but something dark and tactical. He strapped on a shoulder holster, checked the weapon with the casual competence of someone who'd done it 10,000 times. Emma was crying silently. David looked like he was trying very hard to be brave. Johnson crossed to them, knelt down, so he was at their eye level. I'm sorry, he said simply. I'm sorry I lied. I'm sorry for all of this, but I need you to understand something. He looked at each of them in turn. Everything I did, every lie, every secret, every Sunday dinner where I sat there and pretended to be something I'm not, I did it to keep you safe. To keep all of you safe. Are you a hero? David asked, his voice shaking. Johnson smiled, but it was sad. I'm a man with a job, buddy. Sometimes that job means stopping bad guys. But I'm not special. I'm just a shield, Emma said suddenly. She was looking at him with new eyes, understanding dawning. You're a shield. You protect people. That's why you're invisible. Because shields don't get praised. They just take the hit so other people don't have to. Johnson's throat tightened. He reached out, pulled both kids into a brief, hard hug. You're smarter than I gave you credit for, he whispered. Both of you. Take care of your parents, and if Agent Morrison tells you to do something, you do it. No questions. Understood. They nodded. Johnson stood, looked at Michael. I'll explain everything when I get back. Johnson, if I don't. He paused. There's a safety deposit box at First National. Key is taped under the false bottom of my dresser drawer, second from the top. Inside is everything you need. My will, life insurance, passwords to accounts, explanations. Everything. Don't talk like that, Michael said, his voice rough. I have to. It's part of the job. Johnson clasped his brother's shoulder. I love you, Michael. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth. But I meant what I said. The less you knew, the safer you were. Then he turned to Jane. She stood there, surrounded by broken china, her carefully constructed image of her brother-in-law shattered just as completely. Mascara ran down her cheeks. Her hands were shaking. I called you useless, she whispered. You did. I said terrible things. For years. I thought her voice broke. God, Johnson, what have I done? What have I been saying to you? Johnson stepped closer. Gently, carefully, he took the remaining plates from her hands and set them on the side table. You said what you saw, he told her quietly. And what you saw was what I wanted you to see. A man with no purpose, no drive, no value. I needed you to believe that, Jane. I needed everyone to believe it. He paused. The best cover isn't a lie. It's a truth that looks like something else. But I was so cruel. You were protecting your family, your home, and your kids. You saw someone you thought was taking advantage, and you called it out. That takes courage. He smiled slightly. I actually respected it. Most people let resentment fester. You brought it to the surface. That's healthy in its own way. Jane laughed, but it came out as a sob. You're trying to make me feel better about being a bitch to you. I'm trying to tell you that I understand and that you need to keep that protective instinct sharp tonight. Because Morrison is going to be here, and you're going to do exactly what she says when she says it. Can you do that for me? Jane nodded, wiping her eyes. What's really happening tonight, Johnson? What are you going to do? I'm going to stop some very bad people from killing the Vice President of the United States, Johnson said simply. And then, if I'm lucky, I'm going to come home and have some cold pot roast. Because honestly, he smiled. It really is excellent. Sir, Reeves was at the door, urgency in every line of her body. 38 minutes. We need to move. Johnson grabbed his go-bag, checked his weapon one more time, and headed for the door. He paused at the threshold, looking back at his family, Michael with his arm around Jane, Emma, and David pressed close, Morrison already taking up a defensive position by the window. See you soon, he said. And then Johnson Thomas Special Advisor, Level 5, the invisible shield walked out into the rain, climbed into a black SUV, and disappeared into the night to do the job that no one would ever know he'd done. Behind him, in the sudden silence of the house, Jane Thomas sank to the floor among broken plates and broken assumptions. He was here the whole time, she whispered, saving the world, and I called him useless. Michael knelt beside her, pulled her close. He let you call him that, he said quietly. He needed you to call him that because that's the kind of man he is. Through the window, they watched the SUVs pull away, lights flashing, racing toward a threat that Johnson Thomas would face the way he'd faced every threat for the past 3 years. Silently, invisibly, alone but not tonight. Tonight, finally, his family knew the truth. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness is never wasted, and that even broken path can lead to beautiful places and change of lives, please like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Kindness Arena, because your support keeps stories like this alive and spreading. Tell us in the comment what you would have done differently if you were the agent. Or has a stranger's kindness ever changed your life in ways you didn't expect? We'd love to hear your story.